Grabe naman Mike yung sheesh na yan. Because looks like we're at our final episode.
That's right. And I know that it hasn't been that long of a ride. For sure, it sure was fun. Diba?
I also hope that we were able to impart information to our listeners throughout this podcast. So for those who haven't watched or listened to our previous episodes, make sure you do, or else you'd be missing out.
Tama, tama. Pero given that we have two former episodes, how about we do a quick recap of these?
So okay, let's go do that, Mike.
Okay. So for our first episode, we talked about the underlying health implications of vaping among youth. If vaping provides more benefits or does it outweigh the risks?
We also talked about the mental and oral health effects vaping has on oneself.
And lastly, for that episode, we talked about the effects of secondhand smokers of e-cigarettes.
For our second episodes, we talked about the business aspect of vaping. We started with the history of vaping and also discussed how vaping businesses market their products.
Moving forward, for our third and final episode, we will finally be talking about the environmental aspect of vaping with the title E-Cigarette Life Cycle, a Hazard to the Environment. So, Cham, take it off.
Okay, so let's talk about it. So, what are the effects of e-cigarettes to our environment? The first one is the effect of single-use plastics. Like that's pretty obvious, I think. Like many vape products like Juul use plastic pods or cartridges to hold the e-juice. With these products, users replace the pods where the e-juice is used up. But these pods can't be recycled with other plastic waste because they contain nicotine, which is a hazardous waste. Yeah.
They also have other toxic chemicals in them. If pods and cartridges are discarded as litter, they may leak nicotine and other chemicals into the environment or be eaten by wildlife or pets, which is so dangerous because it could kill them if they accidentally eat those pods. Diba? Actually, a research has shown that type a small amount of nicotine, it can still be very harmful or even lethal to animals.
And syempre ayaw naman natin yung mangyari, no, Mike?
Absolutely. Considering that animals aren't that picky with what they eat as compared to humans, I mean, di naman nila alam na dangerous na pala yung ini-intake nila, di ba?
Yeah, that's right. Di naman nila alam yung vape eh. Like, they don't know what a vape is in the first place. Anyway, to get an idea of the impact of vape waste, researchers at the University of California, San Francisco collected 172 pieces of vape waste in one day. One day. From 12 Bay Area school parking lots that they went to. And that's just high schools, where kids aren't even legally allowed to vape. So what more if yung areas na pinagkuha nila ng vapes is on the areas that are legalized yung pag-vape, diba?
But kung school parkings pa nila pinulit, you know, is that even allowed? Like, nasa school property pa din sila. But moving on, since they're from a different country and maybe vaping is legal there or something like that, another effect of e-cigarettes has on the environment is the increase of plastic pollution.
Yeah, I think when pods, cartridges, and other plastic vape waste is discarded, like that plastic eventually breaks down into smaller and smaller pieces of plastic called, microplastic. So unlike a banana peel or an eggshell, these tiny particles, of plastic aren't harmless or they aren't harmless and surely they're not biodegradable.
But instead, they can end up polluting our oceans due to storms, wind, and other water runoff that directs these materials to those places. As microplastics have been found in marine wildlife and even in your own drinking water.
Like you won't even notice because of how small it is. Like maybe you need even a microscope. You might and it might even damage your inner systems because you've been ingesting it all along without you even knowing. Like you
Yeah,
might eat, fishes that have it and you wouldn't know. Diba?
okay, of how small it is. But though scientists are still studying the potential harms of microplastics, studies suggest that they could cause inflammation and be toxic in humans and animals alike. By 2040, there could be 10 million additional tons of plastic waste each year. Each
Grabe yung amount of plastics, Mike, no? Like, I can't even imagine kung how polluted our world could be by then, like by 2040. But I guess by taking some steps, we could stop that from happening, no, Mike?
Absolutely, Chum. There are many ways naman to stop it, like lessen the use of plastics, maybe switch to a more sustainable or eco-friendly way. Well, highlighting, of course, the disposal of e-waste.
But accordingly, ang hirap kasi i-dispose ng e-waste talaga. Like disposing of e-waste is a considerable challenge due to many different types of chemicals and materials na, included sa product mismo. Waves present at least two problems. Like as their vaporizers contain a circuit board, which can contain plastics and heavy metals.
And they also use lithium-ion batteries. But many vape products and accessories are being thrown away in the garbage or worse, dumped as litter. As batteries degrade, they can leach their chemicals into the environment. And if they are put in garbage or trash receptacles, they pose a fire risk in waste and recycling facilities if damaged or exposed to high heat, putting the garbage workers' safety at risk.
Actually, that's true. Like, if we dispose these e-waste na hindi naman yung environment lang yung mapapahamak mo eh. It's also the workers as they might be in serious danger when those waste create explosions or release dangerous chemicals na can enter, their human bodies.
Di ba? Sila na nga yung naglilinis ng environment, tsaka yung mga tinapon na e-waste, sila pa yung napapahamak talaga. So the best way is to dispose it properly and make sure that no one is in danger, nor the environment should also be.
Well, Mike, I guess I have to ask this. So, ano ba meron sa nicotine na it is so dangerous to dispose improperly? Like, can you
So
explain?
nicotine is a neurotoxin that has been used as a pesticide and has been considered accurate hazardous waste by the Environmental Protection Agency since 1980. Discarded devices may leach lead, cobalt, and other substances into the environment. Toxic chemicals from commercial tobacco product waste can accumulate in animals, soil, and aquatic ecosystems, leading to contaminated drinking water and foods and posing additional downstream risks to human health and the environment.
I mean, to add more to that statement, Mike, according to the research conducted last 2020 by truthinitiative.org, as stated here, more than half or 51% of young e-cigarette users reported disposing of used e-cigarette parts or empty disposables in the trash, and 70% in the regular recycling bin, not designed for e-cigarette waste. And 10% reported that they simply even just throw it on the ground.
Which almost half or 49.1% of young people don't know what to do with used e-cigarette pods and disposable devices. So, Chang, how do you properly dispose of these?
Okay, so that's a good question. Like, we really have to talk about it. Because, as the world is becoming more critical towards its environmental sector and wishes for it to be taken care of in a much better fashion, one of the things we have to remember is the end user responsibilities that we have for everything that we use and consume. And, vaping is not an exception to this.
Actually, we can see that responsibility of proper disposal and usage aren't usually met with these vape devices. According to the UCSF survey conducted, a number of vape products and accessories are not properly handled as it is mixed in a normal garbage can and dumped as litter. So, bigay na ganito nga yung situation. Why don't we talk about the proper disposal of used vape, Chang?
Then let's go talk about the mic. So when it comes to these e-cigarettes, plastics is very much evident as one of the primary pieces of waste that can be found after disposal. As plastics used in the production of the body of e-cigarettes are made of hard plastics, which are not recyclable and biodegradable, this is even bigger concern. So that means if we want to dispose of these things properly, the discarded plastic pod should be free from rechargeable batteries and nicotine residue before being thrown out to make it a lot safer for the ones handling the waste and for the environment as well.
Talking about separating these rechargeable batteries before throwing out the main plastic body or yung case of the vape also hints about electronic waste that these things produce now. I think it's quite important for us to also be educated on how to properly handle these kinds of residuals from electronic cigarettes.
Yeah. So, kaya Mike, kaya mo bang sabihin sa amin kung paano i-dispose ng tama itong mga electronic waste?
Sure can. As batteries of used e-cigarettes degrade, it poses a higher risk of leaching its chemicals to the environment, which is actually very harmful. Moreover, if exposed to high heat, there are chances of fire to break out. Given that e-cigarettes are comprised of lithium-ion batteries, proper segregation of the said components should be also done as it contains elements that are quite similar to the smartphone.
So, paano nga ba ginagawa paano gagawin natin sa mga components?
That said, the electronic components should be disposed to an electronic waste facility to handle the said waste accordingly.
Okay. Gets na yun na yung part na. But other than that, other than the plastic and electronic waste, I think one of the important factors then we surely couldn't and shouldn't miss out on is the hazardous chemical waste na these things leave. Kasi nicotine found in vape fluids are considered hazardous waste, and if not disposed properly, these can accumulate in the soil, aquatic ecosystems, and even animals, further damaging our mother nature. You know, Mike, it is said to best dispose of old vape fluids by letting an absorbent material soak the liquid and seal it in a bag before showing it out to prevent mixing with other substances.
Pero Cham, paano naman if yung pod is parang mahirap siya i-dismantle o kaya di mo pwede ma-empty out yung laman?
I think this is a good question. I think a lot of people have the same concern. Kapag ganyan naman kasi yung situation mo, Mike, the best case for situations that the pod cannot be emptied out, it should just then be placed in plastic bag containing an absorbent material, right? Para yung, di kumalat yung liquid once disposed and faced through the harsh logistical procedures that it's put through once put in a garbage can.
So now that we've talked about the responsibilities that are on the consumer side of these gadgets, we also have to acknowledge that there is also the manufacturers and producer responsibility. E-cigarette manufacturers' responsibility comes into play as there is no existing policy that regulates the proper disposal and recycling process of the waste it produces. I mean, everybody should know this. Having little to no guidelines on appropriate disposal methods is very harmful to the environment.
Definitely so, Mike. Like proper electronic waste disposal is not accessible to ordinary consumers and communities. Like these kinds of processes are actually very complicated and not really deemed as common knowledge for the public. Like, it's not that simple na malalaman mo kaagad kung paano ba i-segregate yung mga electrical components na to and kung saan ba yung nearest electronical waste recycling, site malapit sa inyo. The urgent issue of imposing standardized processes for proper disposal methods of e-cigarettes is needed to demand accountability for the industry and for the betterment of our overall environmental standpoint.
But when you look into it kasi, companies are shifting away from the main goal of addressing environmental problems brought upon by e-cigarette consumption. And that somehow by shifting the eyes of the public through different marketing methods, they can shift the mass attention towards other factors of vaping. These acts overshadow the environmental hazards that these devices cause, which is so wrong.
Yeah, I think we should hold these companies accountable for the damages that their products cause and make it so that every person out there is aware of what consumption of these products bring about to our environment. They have the right to know.
Yeah, that exactly, Cham, is why we're doing this podcast today.
Yeah, that exactly is why we're doing this podcast. So, grabe Mike, I guess that ends our discussion about the environmental aspect of vape usage, and with it so, the podcast itself.
Again, it has been a short but very fun and such an informative ride for us, your host, Mike and Cham. And hopefully you guys too had some same realizations and information absorption that me and Cham received from this podcast.
I think, Mike, it would only be right if we get a proper shoot off of our most important points and biggest realizations that we've had through this podcast. So, handa ka na ba?
Now na?
Oh.
Okay. Meron akong mga naisip.
Okay, nice. Okay, nice. Let's start. So for me, particles of nicotine flavor and other compounds are suspended in the mist from e-cigarettes.
Advertising for e-cigarettes has been heavily aimed at adolescents. They were the target audience for everything, including the billboards, the packaging, and the actual product.
78% of middle and high school students had seen at least one commercial for vaping between 2014 and 2016, when the industry's advertising for the product skyrocketed.
In the Philippines, an estimated 2.7 million Filipinos use e-cigarettes or vaping devices. Approximately 1 in 5 high school students and 1 in 20 middle school students have tried the use of vaping.
Increased risk of premature death or serious morbidities and developing major illnesses such as cancer and coronary heart disease can be due to vaping.
Vaping is only harmful to one's health. It can also be addictive, as it becomes more prominent among the youth. Using e-cigarettes may normalize traditional smoking again.
But despite all of this, Public Health England asserted that e-cigarettes are 95% safer than smoked tobacco.
Going to the business side of vaping, in 2003, the company that the first commercially successful electronic cigarette creator, Honlick, worked for, Golden Dragon Holdings, developed the device and changed its name to Ruyan, which means light smoke.
In 2008, the World Health Organization, or WHO, proclaimed that it does not consider electronic cigarettes to be a legitimate smoking cessation aid.
According to the Truth Initiative, here are 4 marketing tactics e-cigarette companies use to target youth. 1, offering scholarships. 2, creating a buzz on social media. 3, sponsoring music festivals and events. And lastly, 4, introducing appealing flavors.
Then for the environmental aspect, many vape products like Juul use plastic pods or cartridges to hold the e-juice.
These pods can't be recycled with other plastic waste because they contain nicotine, which is a hazardous waste.
Disposing of e-waste is a considerable challenge due to the many different types of chemicals and materials in these products.
Nicotine is a neurotoxin that has been used as a pesticide and has been considered active hazardous waste by the Environmental Protection Agency since 1980.
Almost half, or 49.1%, of young people don't know what to do with used e-cigarette pods and disposable devices.
Used vape have 3 prominent waste types, namely plastic waste, electronic waste, and hazardous chemical waste.
Consumers should know how to properly segregate these residuals and dispose them off properly.
Lastly, companies should hold the responsibility of having proper standardized processes for proper disposal methods of e-cigarettes to demand accountability in the industry.
And that's it. Thank you everyone for listening and tuning in to 3, 2, 1, take your breath away. I'm Cham,
And I'm Mike.
your host all throughout these 3 podcast episodes tackling electronic cigarettes in these 3 main perspectives.
Health, finance, and environment. We hope we were able to give you guys new information you've never heard before.
And realizations you've just had.
Thank you so much and see you when we do.
Bye.